I want to move the conversation to this idea of mentoring. We've alluded earlier, people in the room are aware that mentoring and sponsorship is incredibly important for women to rise in their careers. And so I want to talk a little bit about mentoring across gender lines. And I want to start with you, Mike, because I know you do that. This is an incredibly important topic of conversation, because I think when you're mentoring across gender lines, there is an incredible opportunity for both parties to learn from each other, the men from the women and vice versa. And it's something that has not been discussed enough as to what are the challenges and opportunities of mentoring across the gender lines. What has been your experience? And I'm going to leave it open after that for anybody who might want to pitch in.
Well, I mentor several women, globally, and there are some commonalities that I found out. I think number one, there's each of my mentees are very competent in their jobs. What they lack in many cases is the confidence piece, for whatever reason. And there could be a lot of causal factors for that. Experiences that they've had in the past that have really hurt them or whatever. Feelings that maybe they got passed over for promotion. And sometimes it's valid and sometimes it's not. But when I look at my particular mentees, they are, number one, they are all leaders or potential leaders in their right. And one of the things is the validation of that is very important to them. For someone that's a mentor to just let them know that they have that value, they have that worth, they have that potential. But also that they're not perfect, that we all make mistakes. That's the other thing, is that the mentees I have sometimes feel that they can't make a mistake, that it's going to be a detriment to them. As opposed to, yeah, you can make a mistake. You learn more from mistakes anyway than you do when you're just totally successful. And then part of what I do is I don't tell them what is more of a conversation about, what are your goals and desires and what are you looking for? And then, of course, when we get into like performance review period and other things, there are always the inevitable questions about how do I position myself for that, et cetera, et cetera. But to me, the idea is that, number one, I'm not going to be their only mentor, right? I may be their first mentor, but I'm not going to be their only one. And I'm going to make sure that they have a diverse set of mentors that cross gender lines, that cross different disciplines, say within Microsoft, that cross different lines of business, because I want that diversity of thinking. Yes. And that will help them to determine where they want to go. One particular person that we know of, I've given her entree to a lot of different mentors. And ultimately, she will determine what suits her best to move on. But the flip side of that, I learn as much from them as they learn from me. That's the best part of mentoring. That's why I got into it years ago. I learned about the business because I'm a security guy. So I know security. But maybe I don't know enough about Office or Windows or blah, blah, blah. Other than it's good, right? second shameless plug. So to me, that's the benefit of mentoring. You get both sides. And it's been worthwhile to me. And it's interesting from just a personal career optic, my boss mentions it a lot, the fact that I mentor, because I think he values the fact that, if you've reached a certain status in a particular enterprise, that you're willing to give back. Yeah. So it's a two-way street.
Yeah, that's very useful. And developmental networks is something that we try and emphasize in the program as well. Diversity of your network. I mean, you've got 400 connections on LinkedIn. All 400 of them happen to be Indian women or Singaporean Chinese men. It's not a very diversified network, isn't that right? And maybe there's an opportunity to develop an app there about diversity in your networks. It's a business idea for LinkedIn, maybe going forward. So those are interesting ideas. But anybody else on the panel who's worked across gender lines? And
I'll tell you when I deal with somebody in a mentorship discussion. One of the things I notice particularly, and maybe it's me, but when I'm dealing with a lady colleague, very often she would assume that I don't understand. She will assume I will never understand.
Right.
And to all the people here who could someday be there, okay, I will say, I actually want to understand. 2/3 or maybe more than 2/3 of the people in my office are female. If I don't understand them, I can't run the business. But on a one-to-one basis, for some reason, they actually think I will never understand. And you know, I know it's it's trying, it's frustrating. You know, if you try and you don't understand, I'll go back and ask my wife. I'll go back and ask my daughter. I'll keep asking until I understand. But you can't have a conversation. You can't have a discussion. You can't change anything if you start the discussion thinking he's never going to understand. And I pick on that because maybe there's a little bit of that with my male colleagues as well, but it doesn't come through so much. I actually hear the words, you will never understand, again and again and again, The fact that my wife sometimes throws that at me too, only says that I want to continue listening until one day I understand.
Right. let's give the men a chance, right? Let's give the men a chance. Anybody else had anything to share?
I've noticed one thing. I've had mentors who are women and I've had the privilege of working in different parts of the world. I think one thing that I've started to notice, particularly in the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years of my career, I've been in India and now in Singapore, is this aspect of, and you and I talked about it a little bit, but Asian women, and this additional element, and the word that shows up repeatedly is obligation. And I'd heard it a lot. I'm born and raised in India, so I've heard it. But it's in the workplace, it started showing up very often, to the point where I've actually had a couple of sessions with women leaders in our team and just discussed that. And I think it goes to Mike's point where it was more about me learning at that point, quite honestly. I was a mentor, but I was learning. And I think I don't have a solution to this, but I think the fact that they feel that they have obligations that are programmed into them by society, by centuries of upbringing and culture, we should not underestimate what the value of that is. Yes. And for most people, definitely in this part of the world, culture trumps their career. And that also should not be underestimated. So given all of that, a lot of the thinking, definitely a lot of the published thinking, let me put it that way, has come from Western thought leaders on how to think about it. And I think there is a place for that. But I think this other element which I am still trying to figure out a solution for is for Asian women with this obligation that they feel. And as an Asian man, I feel obligations too, but I guess in conversations I can sense it's much more prevalent in women. How do we as male managers, and I would say only largely for the male managers who can't fully understand what those obligations are, maybe we know what they are, but we can't fully appreciate it. How do we coach people through that process? And it's still a journey. I'll be the first to admit I'm just going through it. But I think my role, as I see it right now, is to surface that. Right. And to at least discuss that. So when we are talking about talent, we do talent calibration routinely, as do most companies. But when we're talking about it now, I actually surface this as a topic for discussion. And every time I do, I find that both men and women managers go silent for a good 30 seconds. They have no answer. They're all highly skilled, MBAs, this, that, and the other, no idea how to handle this. Yeah. And I think that's something that's worth discussing.
Right. I think, Steve, we have an idea for another program at Executive. Supporting male leaders understand female leaders, as the discussion is showing. So when we are talking about...
I'd just like to add one thing. I was very fortunate. I had a very... I would say caring mentor all through my career. But the funny thing is that as I look back and say, what were those interventions that she made at various points which really helped me? not very many were related to this issue of work-life balance. My strongest recollections are she taught me how to build relationships. She taught me how to interact with investors. She taught me how to manage my teams. She taught me how to manage my anger. Very little was to do with this work-life balance. So I don't know, I'm just reaching the conclusion I just married a great guy. Which may be another important learning, for young girls, that, it's true that, if you're looking for that tall, dark, handsome guy who's a male chauvinist, please don't marry him. Date him, by all means, live with him, but please don't marry him. Because that's not going to be good for your career. So what you need in your career is a guy who's going to be able to understand and is going to be able to support you when you really need that support. And that's a decision that you might make, and you might make well, and you might not make so well.
Yeah. I've been fortunate in, I think, making the right decision. My husband's sitting right here.
Nodding
right? So,
100%. That is it. And if you turn it around, for me, I think the single most important factor on that critical success factor for my career has been the person I married.
yes.
Getting it right simply means that you can focus on the problems at work and the problems that your colleagues have and help them. And it's about how much time you have, and when you talk about work-life balance and all that, it allows you to focus on your career rather than something else which is destructive and not getting you anywhere. So it makes a major difference.
It ties back to that point of knowing what is it that you want out of your career and out of your life. I remember this very seminal discussion I had with one of my mentors when I was doing my master's in Melbourne, and she told me about a student of hers whose husband was not supportive of her getting a degree. And he would take her assignments and books and he would throw them in the fireplace. Very extreme example, which to me seemed like heresy since I was an aspiring academic. Till one day she found the one place to put her homework, assignments, and books where her husband would never look, which was inside the washing machine. Right? But for me, that story was very important because it made me realize at that point in time that I don't know if I'll ever marry a tall, dark, and handsome man, which you are. But if he did not respect, and in Asia, his family did not respect my academic aspirations, it would never work out. So I think to Hari's point about the cultural piece being very central to this conversation.